Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, we have Allison Tierney. Allison is a registered dietitian and board certified in oncology nutrition. She is also the founder of Wholesome LLC, which is a virtual-based company working to improve health and lifestyle with prevention, improvement, and management of common health conditions. Welcome, Allison.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much for being here. I am so excited to have you on Plant Your Seed. I have so many questions, so many things I just would love to ask you, and we'll
Awesome.
get to that right now, I think.
Cool.
A pillar of your approach is to focus on prevention so that people can take control of their own health. What is the number one recommendation that you would give to help someone take control of their own health?
Oh, the number one recommendation. If I would give a number one recommendation, it would truly be to start by adding rather than necessarily subtracting when it comes to your nutrition. Because I always like to focus on the things that we can add to our diet, such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, and so forth, rather than being fearful of what we might have to take away first, because I think individuals will start to see incredible changes in their health pretty quickly. Focus on adding before necessarily subtracting.
When and why did you transition to a plant-based diet?
Yeah, so my journey goes back to about 2014 or so. So I actually went back to school to become a registered dietitian. I already had a degree in business and leadership and management, and then decided to go back to school to become a dietitian. And part of the reason that stems, so I was a college athlete, and most of my view of nutrition was really about how can I improve my sports performance naturally with nutrition. So that's where it started, that passion. But when I was in college, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was a freshman, and my grandfather unfortunately passed away from liver cancer when I was a senior. And then my other grandmother is a breast cancer survivor. My other grandmother passed away from lung cancer, and my godmother is a breast cancer survivor. So like during this whole time where I was playing sports and I was going to school for business, I started to grow this question about nutrition and how it could help people during the course of prevention, also during the course of treatment, and how can it help prevent recurrence following treatments. So that's where it initially started. And I wasn't sure that I should go back to school at that age. You know, I'm 21-year-old. I thought it was too late to go back to school, and it's something I kind of laugh at now.
Right.
But my husband, then boyfriend, was like the biggest advocate for me going back to school, because he's like, you love this stuff and that's what you love talking about. You should do it. So I did it. And when I went to school, I told all my professors, I was like, I want to be an oncology dietitian. I want to work with cancer patients. And that's kind of where it started. But in that whole process, once I graduated, became a registered dietitian, and then started working as an outpatient oncology dietitian at a well-known, nationally known cancer center, I started diving a little bit more into the research about how I could best help my patients throughout the course of treatment and after. And that's where I started stumbling upon the plant-based diet. And it really, truly was just a stumble. It just kind of happened. And so I started finding more and more research, and I started applying it to my practice and helping with patients. But at the same time, I kind of looked at my own diet, which I would say was considered a healthy, like omnivorous diet, but there was still there was low in red meat, mostly chicken, low fat dairy, fruits and vegetables. There really weren't any legumes there. But so I started taking a look at my own diet and looking at what it was, and started to be like, wow, if I'm teaching this to my patients, I really need to be practicing it myself and learning how to practice it so that I can teach them better how to do it. So I started going through the transition actually pretty slowly. I first started just to reduce the dairy. I'm from Wisconsin, so there's a lot of dairy here. And being dairy-free is a little bit more like unheard of here. I mean, there's definitely growing in popularity in Milwaukee or in Wisconsin as well, but it's just not as prevalent, that's for sure. So I started by reducing that. And then one month I just decided that I was going to be a vegetarian, and I actually never turned back. But I was still including small amounts of dairy here and there, mostly in the form of like cheese or an occasional ice cream and so forth. But during that same time, my husband and I were experiencing infertility, and we had been trying for quite some time to try to start a family. And we had started some medications, and it was kind of on that cusp of going towards more aggressive types of treatments that I dove even deeper into the research to make sure the plant-based diet was safe in pregnancy and safe in childhood and, as postpartum and everything. And it was at that point that I took the deep dive into it, and I approached my husband and I said, I don't need you to do this with me, but I would really like your support in it and trying the 100% whole food plant-based diet, and just because I really think it could help us. And he, of course, said, whatever you think will help. And I thankfully get to say just a few weeks later, I ovulated for the first time because I was taking tests very frequently, and was able to conceive a child and have a beautiful 3.5-year-old daughter now, who we also raise plant-based. And so I believe that nutrition wasn't the only role in helping to, start a family, but I do believe that it played a large role in it. And the reason behind that is because I have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is highly related to, unbalanced hormones. And when you learn a lot more of the research, you learn about how much the food that we're eating can affect our hormones. So from that day on, just kind of a flip of a switch. And then I've stayed plant-based ever since, and still practice it with my patients, and then ended up going into my own practice of wholesome LLC, where I teach people in all different categories about how to live their life plant-based as well.
You were having difficulties conceiving, and then you went plant-based, and within a couple of months, you were pregnant.
Yeah, and honestly, it was only a matter of a couple of weeks that I got pregnant too, which was like even more like mind-boggling that how quickly it happened for me.
Right, that's really interesting because myself, we had problems with infertility as well, and this was before we were plant-based, way before, and I didn't even think that way. So what made you think that way? Like, as opposed to, being kind of in the medical profession, as opposed to going, I guess, the other route, which would be the test tube baby, infertility route that way, and going through all the different shots and everything like that. Well, what made you think that that was the best way?
I think the biggest thing was I started to understand so much more about my condition of PCOS and how that related to my hormones, and that my hormones were so off the wall, I guess you could say. So that's where I started doing more research specifically in hormone and fertility and how that all connected. And I think, I'm super blessed with, the knowledge and the ability to do research in the field where not everybody has that access or necessarily that skill if they're going through infertility. And I was just able to connect with that. And, I've actually worked with a fertility institute here in Milwaukee, actually a regional one, and they have a physician as well that I've worked with that also promotes a plant-based diet for fertility. So it's definitely growing in popularity because the research is growing as well, where I think you're going to see more people adopting that to try to improve their fertility as well.
I spoke back last year with Donnie Marshall. He is a former NBA player, great physical shape, everything like that. And he and his wife were having difficulties as well. And they switched to a plant-based diet. And the doctors had told them they had like zero chance, and they became pregnant. So
That's
to me,
amazing.
It is amazing. It's something that I don't know how much research is on, but somebody should start to do some more research on this, because it seems to be something that is very prevalent, from when you talk to people and you get their story and you find out that, what, all we did was change to a plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet, and everything worked out for us. It's such a great thing because it's so difficult when you have infertility. It's such a difficult thing because I know from my experience, you feel personally like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's got to be me. It's got to be something I'm doing wrong. There, maybe I got something wrong with me, or physically, or whatever. And it really it's something that bothers you. It
Yeah,
makes
I
it
can
really
totally
difficult.
relate to that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, I truly do believe, I mean, there's definitely different pieces of the puzzle when it comes to overall health and cancer prevention and fertility and all those different pieces, including physical activity and mindset and stress relief and sleep. But nutrition plays a lot bigger role than a lot of people know about or believe. And so I'm glad to see the works of so many experts in the field of plant-based nutrition and a podcast like this that are sharing the information about how you can change and improve your life by consuming more of a plant-based diet or an exclusively plant-based diet, of course.
Right. Now, did you have any positive changes mentally? I mean, obviously you had the physical changes, but what about mentally, as far as like mental clarity or something to that effect?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely experienced more energy, which in turn improved my mental clarity because I always kind of struggled with fatigue, drowsiness, just getting tired really quickly. And I felt like I was getting more tired than I thought I should. And, when I would talk to physicians or whatnot, they'd say, Allison, you're really busy. You're working full time. You went to school. And I was like, I know, but I still feel more drained than I should be. And so that was one of the first things that I noticed. And I think that's what a lot of my clients notice first as well, is just having more energy and, kind of a lift of some of that brain fog. So absolutely, mental clarity, the mental clarity was one of the first ones, but also physical appearance wise, I had horrible acne. And that was one of the first things to clear up physically because, as I mentioned kind of before, I'd slowly reducing that before I flipped the switch completely. My acne was starting to clear up a little bit as I ditched meat and decreased the dairy. But now it's so much better than it ever was. And I definitely contribute that to my diet.
Yeah, I find more and more people that I interview, as soon as they get rid of the dairy, all the acne goes away. And hope for the younger generation that they understand, like my daughters do, that I'm just like, okay, if you don't have any dairy, you got a better chance of, you keep your skin routine normal, you should be hopefully okay. Now, did you struggle with anything when you first went plant-based as far as foods that you missed, or having to deal with family gatherings or friends that questioned your choices?
Yeah, well, when it comes to food, the biggest struggle was the dairy. And I think that's super common for a lot of people, especially of the research that we know with, casomorphins, and how they can be an addictive type property. Also, living here in Wisconsin, there are places that you can go for a restaurant where there's literally nothing on the menu that doesn't have dairy in it because it's so prevalent here. So that was hard. But also when it comes to like family gatherings and so forth, it was hard in the family at first. Super supportive here at home with my husband, and my twin sister actually adopted a plant-based diet as well about the same time, and she did that for the purpose. She was diagnosed with lupus, and I, kind of coached her and counseled her in switching over to a plant-based diet. And thankfully, I can tell you that to this day, her disease is in remission, and she just had a beautiful baby girl about 6 weeks ago, which is something that a lot of lupus patients don't get to experience because of the disease state. So family gathering wise, it really helped to have a support system in my twin sister that we were both doing it. But I do think there was a little bit of, I don't necessarily want to say backlash, but there was definitely a little bit of concern and maybe frustration about adopting the plant-based diet in the beginning. And I think maybe our family thought it was maybe a little bit of a phase and that it would go away. But it wasn't until Lauren had incredible results, putting lupus into remission, that I think my family was really like, oh, this is kind of a big thing here. So it's way better than it ever used to be. And among my friends that aren't plant-based, they just kind of know it. And I think I just over time was just got better at mentally saying like, not everyone's going to agree with it, and that's okay. I'm not going to push my plant-based choices on anybody else.
Sure.
If they have questions about it, I'd be happy to answer that for them. But I in no way would go to a family gathering and say like, oh, you start talking about how people should go plant-based. And I wait for them to come to me. And I think hopefully that's been, a respectful choice and way to approach it with family.
Right. No, I agree. I think that especially with family, if you introduce it to them slowly, they start to understand it. And just by leading by example, you get to show them how it's so much better for you. And then, it's family. They want what's best for you anyway. So that's always a positive thing.
Yeah, and I've seen my parents especially adopting it a little bit more. I'm not sure that they'll completely go, but I definitely notice way less dairy, less meat in their diet. And when we come over, so actually every Wednesday I go over there for dinner, and it's always plant-based now, and not necessarily me having to bring the food anymore. So that's super nice and super supportive. And they're very supportive, too, of my daughter being plant-based, where at first they weren't necessarily okay with that, but now I think they've seen as she's grown up a little bit how beneficial it has been for her and how she takes to it very well and still enjoys her food and isn't deprived and all that kind of stuff.
Now, are there any challenges that you have run into as far as her plant-based diet?
So for my daughter's plant-based diet, that is?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge that I've experienced so far is just kind of picking my battles in terms of what I don't argue with or, be concerned about. Now, for example, French fries, right, can technically be vegan or plant-based, right?
Yeah.
But they're not an optimal form of a potato.
No.
So, there is something that, she likes to go and get French fries with grandma and grandpa. And all she gets is, French fries. It's not like she's getting the ice cream or a hamburger or anything like that. So I kind of pick my battle on that one, even though it's not, not the best. But, the biggest thing in terms of challenges, she's a toddler too, right? She's still going to have the same, I don't want that. I'm picky when it all comes to that. But I work with a lot of my clients that are parents and how they can also adopt many of the different strategies for their kids too, and focusing on that pediatric nutrition component of it. And that's really focused on that when you're feeding a child, the parents decide what and when, and the child decides how much. So if you can practice that, the more I've practiced it and the more I've been better about it and approaching it with my daughter, the more I've seen her try new foods like tofu and cauliflower and different beans that she may not have done before when I wasn't practicing that relationship as in depth. And so it's been really cool to watch her just try new things and explore and be excited about what's on mom and dad's plate too.
Right. No, I'll tell you this much. My girls, they're 10, 13, and 15, so slightly older. But yeah, it's interesting for me because I find it very entertaining when I'll bring home tomatoes, little, cherry tomatoes. I'll wash them, I'll put them in a little bowl, and it's like candy. It's amazing to see them just can I get a tomato? And it's like they're fighting over the tomatoes. And I'm like, I think I must have done something right here.
Yeah,
I mean?
That's so awesome. That's super exciting. Now, and one of my question for you would be so I haven't experienced the school age part, but when they go to school and they have friends that are eating different things, and that starts in the fall. So I'm kind of curious about how that's going to be for my daughter. And the way we've talked about it so far, and the fact that other people choose, they have dairy or meat in their diet, is that we really want to approach it from, we respect everybody else's choice, just like we want them to respect our choice.
Right.
So I'm kind of working with her and talking to her about how, there might be somebody that has a cheese stick or that has some of these things, and we don't ever say anything bad about it. We respect their choices because you would want that in return. But I do know that it's going to be probably a new challenge when she is school age and starts having lunches at school and sees what other kids are eating more often. So are your kids, are your girls completely plant-based, and how do you handle that there?
Yeah, they are. They're vegan, and the only issue that we run into is like at a birthday party. Okay, so they go to a friend's house for a birthday party. Well, pre-COVID-19, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And so what they do is you're sitting there and you're like, okay, a cupcake. Okay, does it have eggs in it? Does it have milk in it? How is it made? And I mean, so we don't sweat the small stuff like that. If they decide they want to have a cheese pizza with their friends, not cheese pizza, but a slice of pizza because that's at the birthday party and that's the only thing that they can eat, then we're okay with that. You know, we take that and we go, okay, well, then we just start again, you know, and when they're in our house, it's 100%, you know, vegan and they understand the choices and they will just not eat like a cheese pizza if it's there. And the older they get, the more they understand why.
That's great to hear, because that's how I feel that my approach will be, is like not sweating the small stuff. And when you're at home, it's plant-based, but, and because you have to look, I mean, they grow independent from you, you know, every moment. And so you want to educate them to make the best choices for themselves. But once they get that certain age, you can't make the choices for them anymore.
Yeah, you just can't. And at some point they're going to have to grow up and make their own choices. And you just give them all the information that you can. And sooner or later, they'll make the right choice. Whether that's what I believe or not, it'll be the right choice for them. And that's all you can do is give them all the information and go from there. So that's all we've tried to do. So, but they really understand it to the point that they get upset sometimes when people come at them about like, oh, where'd you get your protein from? And I just tell them at the store, same place they get theirs. So.
Yep, exactly. So, well, that's great to hear. Thanks for sharing that example of your daughters, and thank them for letting them be an example for me too.
Yeah, right. They're really good at just staying the course, you know, without getting too overly involved and too upset about people and the way that people choose to ask them about their choices and not respect their choices. So
Right, absolutely.
Now, you mentioned that you went into oncology nutrition because of all the cancer that was in your family. Now, my father died when he was 54, I was 9, and that was one of the major reasons for me to choose a plant-based diet. I did a lot of research when I was turning 50, and I looked into all these different diets and all these different things, and I just didn't want my girls to go through what I had gone through, that heartache of losing my father at such a young age. I guess my question to you would be, what are some of the cancer-fighting choices that people can make and the cancer-fighting prevention tips that you can give us?
Sure, absolutely. And well, the best part about a plant-based diet is that any whole plant-based food, so fruit, vegetable, whole grain, legume, and then included in the nuts and seeds area as well, they all contain something called phytochemicals or phytonutrients. And these are plant-based nutrients that are only found within plants, not found within animal products. And these phytonutrients have been shown, research shows that they have incredible benefits, especially related to cancer and disease fighting, including making sure that they can actually help prevent the spread of cancer cells. It can help naturally regulate hormones, which is extremely important for breast and prostate cancers. It can also help prevent DNA damage and actually reverse some DNA damage that's already happened. And the list goes on and on. And so what's great about it is really anybody that can eat a whole plant-based food, you're going to get some of those phytonutrients, which is going to be incredible cancer-fighting benefits. But if we had to choose some that are going to be the top of the list in terms of their cancer-fighting benefits, the first is always going to be, for the most part, dark leafy green veggies, which I think a lot of people are familiar with, that they are the most nutritious foods in the world because they have the most amount of nutrients in the smallest volume. So we can get a lot of incredible phytonutrients from those dark leafy green vegetables. But another one that I always like to encourage people is those cruciferous vegetables, which includes broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. And that's because these cruciferous vegetables, part of the reason they're in their own class of cruciferous is partly how they grow, but within this group of foods, they also contain this phytonutrient called glucosinolates that turn into something called sulforaphane as it goes through a conversion in our body, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And this is very unique phytonutrient to this class of food that has amazing cancer-fighting properties to it. So if somebody can get a serving of cruciferous vegetables into their diet every day, that would be an amazing goal. If someone's not really doing it at all right now, just starting by adding a little bit here and a little bit there and exploring new ways to cook those foods or eat them would be really advantageous to help reduce the risk of cancer or help even during the course of treatment and prevention. And when it comes to fruit, berries are definitely the top choice in terms of their best cancer-fighting protection. When research studied several different types of fruits and their antioxidant component and their ability to fight cancer cells, berries came out on the top of the list. So this is kind of where I talk about, and what I mentioned earlier before, start adding before worrying about subtracting. It's great if somebody wants to subtract right away too, but I find people that are most hesitant about adopting a plant-based diet, maybe because they're worried about how it might taste, or what if I can never have dairy again, that, just by simply adding, you're still going to get these great benefits by the addition of the phytonutrient type foods.
Right. Now, what are some of the most common health-related diseases that can be reversed or prevented by a plant-based diet?
Yeah, so there's quite a list right now in terms of what is considered lifestyle medicine and functional medicine, where it does talk about a plant-based diet, but also physical activity and proper rest and stress reduction. The work of Dr. Dean Ornish, especially, where he's done a lot of research in this area, and it's about that whole person. But when it comes to plant-based, we can definitely see great management or even reversal of disease from the standpoint of type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol and heart disease, high blood pressure, hypertension, cancer. Research has shown that early stage non-aggressive prostate cancer can actually be reversed with a plant-based diet and a healthy lifestyle. So that's pretty incredible because it's,
right.
No medication or treatment has been shown to prove that same type with something like food. So that's pretty incredible. And then we've seen a lot of remissions of autoimmune diseases, such as I was talking about with lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. Those are pretty incredible. Management, in my own situation of PCOS, the list can kind of go on and on and on.
It really can it?
Yeah.
Now, have you had any, obviously your sister, but have you ever had any success in treating patients with a chronic disease?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very thankful and blessed that I've got to work with a lot of people and have some fantastic success stories from them. One of the first ones that comes to mind is a stage 4 breast cancer patient who I was working with. And she had, unfortunately, the physicians had kind of told her, we don't really have any other options for you right now. Our goal is to help get you to your son's. He was being inducted to the Naval Academy, and to help get you there. And we want to make you as comfortable as possible, and so that you can see that. But we don't really have much else for you. And they refused to accept that, which I think is very powerful. And they came to me about things that they could maybe do in their diet, nutrition to help combat that. And we switched her over to a plant-based diet, focused on high amounts of those greens and cruciferous vegetables. And thankfully, I can even, so that was in 2016 or 17. I think it was 2017. And I can tell you to this day, she's doing great. So when she had after adopting the plant-based diet, I believe that was in April of that year, and her son's induction was in June. And from April before that, all of her scans just kept showing progression of the disease. After she adopted a plant-based diet, I believe she had a scan about 6 or 8 weeks later, was the first time she ever saw regression of her disease. She had 2 lung nodules where the cancer had spread to her lungs, and one of the nodules was completely gone, and one was still there, but it was 25% the size that it was before the previous scan. So, her disease is not completely gone. However, she's been able to manage and live a high quality life. That was 2017 and we're here in 2020.
Right.
So that's another incredible one. I have a stage 4 melanoma as well, and she did do chemotherapy as well in conjunction with a plant-based diet, and she has no evidence of disease, and that was after only one completion round of chemotherapy, where that's a little bit more unheard of too, and it was a very intense chemotherapy that she went through, and her side effects from chemotherapy were minimal to none with a very aggressive chemotherapy. And so we've also seen that adopting a plant-based diet during the course of treatment can help minimize, maybe even eliminate side effects, but also increase the tolerability of the chemotherapy. So, those are just some of the great success stories that I've been able to see. And thankfully there's a lot more too.
Yeah, that's amazing. That really is amazing. There's so many stories there. I just don't know where to go. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't a plant-based diet, even if it was just the way whatever they did, it's still amazing that that the cancer has gone into remission, or they have been able to live a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah. And I'm always, emphasizing with people that, nutrition, in advanced cancer nutrition alone, we don't really have research at all to show like this is going to cure you by any means. But what I really believe in my practice is from the research that we know is that it can complementary to other types of treatments and modalities, that it can be very beneficial to help make chemotherapy work better. Like you said, improve quality of life. So there's no guarantee in anything, but thankfully from a lot of the experiences that I've had, we've had very good results.
That's great. That's great. Now, what is one of the things that's really exciting you these days about your business?
The thing that's really exciting me right now about my business, I tried to pick one. I have kind of 2 that I really like, but one is I'm really focusing a lot on my individual counseling sessions, so where I'm working with people individually. And I would say about 75% of my clientele are cancer related, and like they've had a diagnosis before they're going through treatment. And the other rest of them are, looking to just adopt a plant-based diet, trying to achieve a healthier life. And I've just met so many amazing people through that process. And I'm so blessed to be able to work with the people that I do, because when I left the cancer center to work on my own, I was really going to miss the patients that I was working with. And I was worried about what kind of people am I going to miss if I leave. And I'm really glad that I made the dive, because I would have missed so many great opportunities if I didn't as well. So that individual counseling is, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, it must be very rewarding.
Yeah, it totally is. And not to say that it's not hard sometimes, because some of my patients are going through some really, really tough stuff. But it makes me just keep going every single day. It reminds me to, do the best I can in life and my diet and nutrition, while allowing myself to have some grace in it all too. So that's definitely one of them. And the second one is, since I've been in a Wholesome exclusively, I created an online cancer course that kind of like dumps all of the cancer research into one platform, one area that people can learn about the benefits of doing a plant-based diet, why you may consider reducing or eliminating animal-based protein from the diet for the benefits of reducing cancer risk, and then how to adopt a plant-based diet. And that was definitely one of the hardest projects I ever worked on, but the best project at the same time, because I'm really proud of it and have had really great, awesome feedback from my students in that course.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, what is one habit that you find that helps you keep on track with your plant-based diet?
meal planning.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I'm the person that I don't mind making the decision about what's for dinner as long as I do it ahead of time.
What is for
If
dinner
it's
tonight? I'm just
Oh,
curious.
tonight is Wednesday, so it's dinner at my parents' house. So I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
sure. But the other night it was black bean tacos.
Nice.
But menu planning, if I get to 5 p.m. and I don't know what's for dinner or we haven't started, I get a little frustrated and I get a little bit more irritable and maybe a little bit hangry.
Yeah.
So I like to sit down and menu plan for the week ahead. And I take into account, what do we have going on? Are we going to be eating out? Are we going to be eating at my parents' house or somewhere else? And is it going to be just me and my daughter? Or is my husband going to be home? Because if it's just me and my daughter, I want to do something much more simple. But then I make my grocery list right at the exact same time, make sure I have everything. And that's what helps me stay the most consistent. And same with my clients. I highly encourage them to menu plan regularly, and it makes a huge difference in consistency.
Yeah. It also makes your grocery bill go down. If you plan ahead, I find that I just go once a week, get what I need for the whole week, and then come back. And then every day, we have a little dry erase board that we write down what's for dinner, and everybody knows. So there's no, oh, I thought it was this or that. Nope. It's right on the board, and you find out that it's a lot less expensive.
Totally, 100%. Because then you're not making those quick trip to the grocery stores where you tend to do more impulse buying and like, oh, I'll just grab this, and this, and figure out what I can make from it, and maybe you never use it. And
Right.
that's one of my biggest tips to people.
Yeah. Oh, I just this mango looks really good. I'll just bring this home and maybe I'll put it together with something in some kind of a fresh roll or something someday.
Right, exactly.
Now, what cookbook or book or even documentary would you recommend to somebody that is transitioning to a plant-based diet?
When it comes to documentary, I mean, I think most people can agree with this, but the Forks Over Knives one is pretty fantastic. Definitely one of the first ones that I watched in my journey. But what I like about it is their research and everything. It's all research based as well. And I'm really huge in what does the research say. So I think that's an incredible place to start when it comes to documentaries. In terms of cookbooks, man, I have a lot of them that I just keep on my stand. It kind of depends if someone's looking for strictly like whole food, plant-based, no oil versus just like a plant-based diet. I kind of have an assortment of all of them. I really like Vegan for Everybody from America's Test Kitchen. And what I really like about in that cookbook is that they teach you why they do certain things. So why you would use aquabaffa here, like what it does, why you would want to use soy milk over almond milk in a particular type of product. And so I think it helps teach you really well why you're doing what you're doing. I've also really enjoyed the Minimalist Baker cookbook. So I would say those would be probably my top ones to recommend in terms of cookbooks.
All right. Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Before I was vegan, I was tired. And now that I'm vegan, I'm happy.
That's great.
Because I think they coincide. Yeah, in terms of like if you're always tired, it's really hard to be happy all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I just have a different outlook on life and how I approach different things, and so it's been amazing from that. I'm so blessed and grateful for, being able to have the story that I have in terms of, having my daughter and all that kind of stuff. But my only regret, which I think is most people's, is that I wish I had done it sooner, become plant-based sooner, especially as a college athlete. I would have loved to experience the benefits of a plant-based diet during being an athlete. And so, I feel like my recovery rate is better now, 10 years out of college athletics than it was then.
Yeah. No, I look at it that way. And then I always try to remind myself that at least I started, at least I started, and I know that it would have been better to start earlier, but again, at least I'm doing it, and I do feel better. And there are a lot of people that might never get that chance.
Yeah. It's never too late to start. Never. Even if somebody is 80 or 90, like it's never too late to start.
I agree. It's never too late to plant your seed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's such a great pleasure having you here and talking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way that people can reach you on Instagram, social media, the web?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I've had a really good time. When it comes to social media, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Wholesome LLC. So that's WHOLESOME LLC. And then also the website is www.wholesomellc.com. So on the website, there's a form that if you want to contact me directly, you can always reach me there. I have, that's where people, if they're interested in working together one-on-one, information about the cancer course is all there. So yeah, that will all come directly to me if someone wants to reach out, and I'd love to chat with them a little bit no matter where they are in their journey.
That's great. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.